Having good movement on controller in Apex is not super easy to do. But luckily for you, in this video, I'm teaching everything you'll need to know about it. And yes, all of these things will apply to console and PC players. So let's get into it. The first movement techniques I want to go over are going to be the ones used on zip lines. Now everybody loves zip lines and the sick movement that you can create from them. A lot of creators have learned to embellish these movement techniques and it looks really cool for them to pull off. So let me show you how to have better movement while utilizing zip lines. The first movement tech is what I call the quick interaction. This is where you'll be able to interact with the zip and create momentum from side to side or up above you. This makes it so that you don't actually have to ride the zip line and become a stagnant target for your enemies. The way I do this is I press X for interact and then quickly press jump while simultaneously looking the opposite direction. So let's say I'm in the zipline building, I want to quickly get to the floor above me. I press X facing towards the zipline shaft, and then I quickly press jump while turning my view in the opposite direction towards the floor I want to land on. This can also work on a side-to-side basis, but it's not as useful because, as most of you know, we can only interact with the zipline 3 times before it'll kick us off. Now, this took me a while to learn, and it is pretty awkward to do, especially if you hold the controller normally and don't use any paddles like myself. But as you can see, it's definitely possible to do and certainly will help you while you're in these buildings or really in any area with a zipline. The second zipline technique that you're going to want to learn is what's known as the zipline super jump. Instead of making a greater than symbol on the zipline, you're going up higher off of the interaction. So the move you do is more like an upside down 7. I hope that vision makes it a bit more clear, but it could just be confusing. Well, anyways, let me explain how to do this first, and then I'll get into like when you're going to want to do it. If you're in the zipline building, it's very similar to the quick interaction, but instead of hitting jump once, you're going to need to spam it twice and quickly. The timing of when you hit jump twice is what will make or break when you're trying to do this. This double jump is what will give you that extra boost up, and you're going to need to hit X and then AA, and you're going to want to turn 180 so that you're back facing whichever floor you're trying to get to or look up at. You can perform this tech on nearly all zip lines, so map-made horizontal zip lines, Pathfinder-made horizontal ones, zip lines that aren't in an elevator shaft, which may send your momentum further out horizontally, but you can do this on basically any zip line. The technique is pretty useful to learn as your opponents aren't really going to know what the heck you're doing unless the player is very experienced, but it's just going to be hard for them to track you in general. If you're in any building that has a zip line and you want to peek the floor above you without necessarily committing on going up to that floor, this is a very OP tech that you'll see your favorite content creators use. This works even better if you have a single fire gun too, because you'll briefly have a moment to shoot anyone who is on that floor above you. If you can get some good damage off, then you can just commit on going up onto that floor, as the zip line will still be right next to you so that if you get that damage, you can reattach and interact with the zip and then follow onto that floor. However, another use case though is if you're trying to escape or quickly get to the top floor, you can super jump and then get onto whichever floor it is, quickly turn around, see if the enemy chases you, and if they do, you may be able to one-clip them as they ride the zip line. But if they have good movement, because, well, they've watched this video too, then it will be difficult for you to track them most likely, but at least you'll have high ground over them. So I just covered some of the more advanced techniques to be using on zip lines, but I have to talk about why movement is important in the first place. Movement should be used so that you can become evasive, to ultimately make yourself a harder target to hit, and to make yourself less predictable to your enemies. And this can work on either the offensive or defensive end of things, but ultimately movement needs to complement the rest of your gameplay. There are no great players who are just great because of their movement. They're also utilizing map awareness, good aim, game sense, a firm understanding of Legend's abilities, and much more. I often see so many newer players develop misconceptions on how movement should be used in their own games. Movement will not kill your enemies, but it can assist with you dying less and getting more kills if you learn to polish up the other areas of your gameplay. Next, I want to talk about slide jumping. Now, this is one of the most basic movement techniques in Apex, and most of you watching this will already know how to do it. However, there are plenty of you who are not utilizing it enough or at the right times. This technique is what you'll be using most often as a controller player, and while it is not advanced, all you have to do is slide forward after you've already got some momentum while running, and then press jump towards the end of the slide. Now, as controller players, we want to be facilitating close range fights, and slide jumping in to get closer to our enemies is a solid strategy, especially if you're doing it to close the gap even closer while they're behind some cover and you already know they've taken damage. By doing this, you will get to them sooner rather than just by running at them. And on the flip side, it will probably throw them off guard a little bit because their aim may not catch up to you if you're using a technique that they weren't anticipating, like you just running at them. There will also be a tad bit less audio on yourself because you're not having any footstep sounds as you're getting closer. The conclusion in this is that you don't just want to slide jump around the map. You want to be slide jumping in fights. You may need to do it to get around the corner so that you can pop a bat. You may need to do it so that you can get closer because you have a peacekeeper, and at 10 feet, it's not as good as at having it at 5 feet. Whatever the case is, use it more in fights. Now, a very similar technique to slide jumping is what I call jump sliding. Same concept here, except we're jumping first and sliding second. When can we use this move? Well, there's a few options. Jumping and then sliding into momentum on a downslope or anything that will create momentum down, you could use to create some space away from your opponent, or you could use it on the opposite side to create momentum to close the gap to them. The cool thing with this technique is it's easy to do and it's pretty widely applicable. It doesn't have to be a great big hill that you jump slide into. It could just be a box or a flat rock or really any small piece of architecture that you climb up, jump, and then slide forward closer to your enemy. Sometimes I will do this mid-fight. Let's say I'm on a roof, but I don't like the damage trade-off that's going on, so I'm moving off the roof while still firing at my enemy. If the roof has any architecture that will stop me from just walking off, I can jump, crouch mid-air, and create a slide off of the roof while never turning my back on the enemy. And this is a really solid way to get out of a fight without letting your guard down. It's something you have to be really conscious of. You have to be paying attention to your health bar, and hopefully the enemy isn't killing you too quick. But if you're mindful enough, you can be utilizing this technique way more often than I'm sure most of you are. If you guys are enjoying this video, all I ask in return is for you to hit the subscribe button. I rarely ask in my videos for people to do this, but I know that when I ask, most of you who already watch my videos consistently just have forgotten to click it. I'm getting super close to 100,000 subscribers, and that milestone will mean a lot to me when I hit it. So thank you for doing so. The next technique I want to go over is wall bouncing. This is one of the most useful advanced movement techniques in the game. So first, let me explain how to do this consistently, and then I'll get into the use cases for it. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go at a wall, box, or any other piece of architecture that has some height to it. You're going to go at an angle. And in the beginning, it's easier if you start at more of a diagonal angle. And then when you improve at doing this, you can go more parallel to the wall. You're going to slide jump at it. The slide needs to be timed correctly and at the right distance away from the wall. Coming out of the jump after you slide, you'll be heading towards the wall. So I turn my stick inward toward whichever side it is on, and then I press jump again right when I connect to the wall. Then coming off of that jump, you should get a lot of momentum. What you want to do is turn the opposite way away from the wall. It doesn't have to be a complete 180 that you do, but most of the time it'll be about turning 90 degrees or so. Now, it will take some practice to do this if you can't already do so, but give yourself some time in learning it. Once you feel like you've got it down pretty consistently, it's mandatory that you start doing it all over the map in the games you're playing. Look at every game you play as practice for using this technique. Eventually, this will help train your mind into remembering to do this during an engagement. If you never implement it in the downtime throughout your games to begin with, you will never remember to do it when it matters. I constantly talk to players who are like, yeah, I know how to do it, but I just never do it in game. And what I just explained is 100% the solution to this. Be mindful of the fact, though, that different legends have different hitboxes, so their heights will vary, and this can affect certain wall bounces. Taller legends like Pathfinder may not be able to wall bounce from the same distance on a box or a wall as Wraith or Lifeline can, because Apex thinks Pathfinder is trying to mantle or climb up the box. Wraith and Lifeline are obviously much smaller legends, so you must time the slide at the right distance, and this will vary slightly on each legend and each object you're trying to bounce off of. So when should you be implementing this into fights? Well, I think there's really 2 or 3 use cases. First is to be evasive and take less damage as you try to reposition away from your opponent. Second is to break line of sight and surprise your opponents on a more aggressive approach. And third is just to be flashy. If you're using it to be evasive or to break line of sight, then it's a defensive tactic and should be used as a means to reposition and hopefully take less damage in doing so. It won't always work, but obviously nothing in Apex does. If you're using it on the offensive end to surprise your opponents and also break line of sight, then be ready to shoot as soon as they are in your field of view. The wall bounce is a quick technique, and as soon as you land, that surprise factor is essentially over. So capitalizing on that brief moment where the enemy doesn't know what you're doing is critical to play off of. This mechanic is a great way to output some serious damage while at the same time avoiding damage from your enemy. Apex can often be a game of seconds, so if you wall bounce and avoid the first few shots from your enemy while you strike a quick blow to them, that could be all of the advantage you need to win that 1v1. I would also consider utilizing this if you are in a disadvantage fight when you have to take on multiple opponents, but maybe you won't have space and time to heal after you fight the first enemy. If you can implement something like this to take less damage, you could increase your chances of winning a 1v2 or even a 1v3. The last aspect to wall bouncing is using it in a downslope to create more momentum. Really pay attention to where you're wall bouncing off of, because you may just land in a slide, and that could be helpful to get away further from your enemy or even close the gap to them. Players who have really good movement are really aware of the map. They know the intricacies of buildings or layouts of specific areas, and this will go a long way in increasing your movement in Apex. I really don't want this fact to be underestimated. Map awareness is so key when it comes to your movement in Apex. If you enjoyed this video and you're interested in 17 misconceptions about Apex Legends, well, I suggest you check out this video next. Thanks for watching. Peace.